Hi, Ben and Nathan. Thanks for all of your advice on the show. In the last year, I've jumped 12 points between official LSAT scores, a 159 to 171. Wow. Okay, there's an example of what we were just talking about. That's a game changer. And couldn't have done it without the podcast. Now that I have a score I'm ready to apply with, I have a few law school admissions questions. Should I ever write an unsolicited YX essay? If yes, when should I do so? Um, your immediate gut reaction to this was no, don't do it. I
Yeah.
think in general that's true, but I just thought of an exception actually. I think in place of a letter of essentially a letter of continued interest, right? If some school
Yeah.
puts you on a wait list and you want to say, "Hey, look, I am serious about you." I wouldn't necessarily frame it as a formal YX. It's just that it probably is going to take on some of those characteristics and might be a paragraph or two and you send it off.
Yep. I think that is right. Carl is going to be talking about that a lot in his upcoming admissions workshops.
Mm.
Letters of continued interest, or LOCI. I think people might
Mm-hmm.
even say loci or something, Loki or something like that. They are a thing that people do when they get
Yep.
put on wait lists normally. So if a school says, "Hey, thank you for applying. We've put you on the wait list," that's a good opportunity to write them a letter specifically about your interest in their school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I might also, you know, if there was a school that you had particular ties to,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're a reach at that school,
Mm-hmm.
then it might be appropriate to tailor your personal statement to that school. Or
Mm.
I think most schools have like is there anything else you'd like us to know? And
Yeah.
if you're not already doing, addendums about your grades or whatever, I could see writing a short paragraph or two about, your dad went to University of whatever law school, and you have these specific family ties. I wouldn't do it for more than one school, but I could see, maybe making that plea. But I would think you probably only want to do that if you're going to be on the bubble.
Yeah. And you'd want to do it if you have something special to say. I feel like these YX essays, especially if they're unsolicited, fall short
Yeah.
when the writer is just kind of making shit up and they see right through that. And now you've just done something worse, right, than doing nothing at all. But if you have serious and identifiable, sincere reasons for going to that school, telling them would show that that you know about them and that you're unlikely to be a yield risk, right? And so, yeah, I agree. I think you could have some cases where you should write it, but you would know that you have something to say.
Yeah, I think the default presumption here is no, unless you have a specific reason. I don't think we probably need to be doing that.
Yeah. Anonymous continues. Do you have tips for choosing which schools to apply to based on scholarship predictions? For context, I have a 3.97 GPA and you have a 171. That's awesome. And am committed to attending law school in or near DC for personal reasons. In addition to applying to most schools in this area, I want to apply to some others with the goal of receiving scholarships I can use in negotiations. My career goal is public service, so I especially don't want to pay for law school. Thank you. Um,
I went really quick, Ben. This took me
yeah.
10 seconds. I went to
Yep.
lsatdemon.com/scholarships. I put in a 3.97 and a 171, and I hit
Mm-hmm.
submit. The first full ride in the DC area that I see is George Mason.
Yeah.
George Mason's in DC, right?
It's just outside of DC, but
Oh,
it's a local school. That
it's
for
in the
sure.
area.
Yep.
ranked, it looks like 42nd in the country. And it says you probably would get a greater than full tuition scholarship with those
That'd be
numbers.
awesome. Yeah.
I'm also seeing,
By the way, I just want to note that that stipend right there would probably more than pay for all the stuff you paid to apply to that school.
Red's question about the $2,000 that Red was going to have to spend for applications and LSAT and LSAT prep. Yeah, the stipend. I mean, we've heard of people getting up to $10,000 stipends from schools.
Yeah.
In some cases. That's why you want to apply broadly. But I am seeing also a half to full tuition at George Washington. Just looking at the DC area schools.
Yeah.
It says half to full at Georgetown.
Wow.
This is an estimate. This is a free public service for y'all. It's at lsatdemon.com/scholarships. It's by no means binding or, ultra scientific. We've made it as scientific as we can, but it's all estimates.
I also looked at the University of Virginia, which is ranked 8th in the country, right?
Yep.
Or whatever. And although they're not in the DC area, a lot of DC folks go out a couple hours there and end up still practicing here in DC. So, and there you'd get less than half, but that's still something. And it's a great school. Holy smokes. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Is that everything for Anonymous? Good luck.
Yeah. Tips. Yeah. I mean, so Anonymous is asking for tips for choosing which schools to apply to based on scholarship predictions. I would apply to the ones where it looks like you're going to get a full ride. I mean, exactly. But if you're totally going to if you really are in the DC area, then of course you should apply to Virginia with these credentials. Yeah, you should apply to Virginia. You should apply to Georgetown. Yeah. But you should also apply to GW and George Mason and American and all the other local area schools. I think there are enough schools in DC that Anonymous doesn't really need to apply outside of DC.
Yeah, I think I can't. Well, some of them are.
I would probably
low tier.
Right. So what I would say is, I think DC, or sorry, why do I keep saying I think Anonymous wants to probably apply to like Harvard.
Yeah.
With a 3.97 and a 171. I mean, that's a contender at a school like Harvard. And if you get into Harvard, then that is going to be pretty powerful leverage to use against Georgetown.
Yeah, you have to think about the schools that Georgetown would be competing with, and they're eyeing the ones in the top 20.
The ones where you would be a credible risk to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't apply to somewhere less than Georgetown and expect that, I got a full ride to American, and so therefore I'm going to use that as leverage against Georgetown. I don't really think so. Maybe.
Although that's not as likely, but yeah, I mean, I think people do struggle with that decision a lot. They get full ride to GW, and then Georgetown is a little bit better, a little higher ranked, but it's like they're charging you money. Like, I'm going to go right down the street and go for free. Can you help me out? And then I think they want to. They may not, but that's the thing. You apply to the local schools, and then you apply to other schools that are in their tier, and ideally giving you something. And I would look at this list. I mean, everybody says this. I want to attend near DC for personal reasons. I don't know what your personal reasons are, Anonymous, and I'm sure in your head right at this moment you're like, look, they are non-negotiable. I have to go to DC. And I just want to question that every single time I hear it. Just really? Like, people are being kicked out of their country right now in like Azerbaijan, right? Or something like that. Like, things sometimes just change, and you have and you adapt. People adapt. I mean, it sucks. It's shitty, but
think about all the wild changes that have happened since COVID. I mean, I'm living in a different state because COVID happened. And that's like, life is long and it's going to have lots of twists and turns. And so, Sure, for personal reasons, I'm imagining a family, maybe a house. Like I get it that you're probably unlikely to leave the DC area, but the schools don't know that either. So if you apply to Washington University in St. Louis, they're known for giving full ride scholarships to try to attract people to St. Louis.
Yeah.
If they give you that full ride and Georgetown only gives you a 50%, one, it's a good problem to have because now you can consider whether you should go. Two, that's one that's, they're high ranked enough. They're ranked right shoulder to shoulder with Georgetown. And if Georgetown's like, man, that 3.79 and that 171 would look awful good on our 509 report instead of the 509 report of Washington University in St. Louis, who knows? They might up their offer.